Right.
Okay. I was about to say, I think the screen froze.
So I got a question. Yeah. So like with the accumulator and it accumulates all the water.
Now
The moisture.
yes.
So where does the moisture go? Does it like, or does it continue like, or does it like turn it or does it turn it like to or does like it helps like it takes the moisture right and since the moisture's down there and then make protect it from the liquid, it tries to like call it like change its state and try to like change it back to vapor, right?
In the accumulator?
Yeah.
So we will take them apart. What is it? I'll show you. Tube. What an accumulator does is it's just a tube that redirects the gas or the liquid. It boils off the liquid.
Hey, Taurus. I got a quick question. So, like, this is what threw me off because I get what you're saying with the compressor that the refrigerant, when it passes, is what cools it down. But then, like, when it's leaving the top of the evaporator, is low pressure superheated vapor, right? Isn't the vapor hot at that point?
No.
Oh, they just call it.
It's
So why is it called super? Huh?
Why is it called superheat? Because it is above the saturation temperature. So
Oh, okay. So it's still cool, but it's just above the saturation temperature.
yeah. So think about it like this, right? Water can boil at 212 degrees, but steam can be at temperature above 212, right? If I put water into a vacuum, I can get water to boil at 40 degrees, right? If I put it in a vacuum.
Yeah,
so
because
if the temperature of the steam is 41 degrees, is it superheated? If the temperature of the steam is 41 degrees, is it superheated?
I
want everybody answer at once.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You
guys got to know this stuff. So if I put water in a vacuum and I boil it at 40 degrees, is steam at 41 degrees superheated? Come on. Yeah. See, this is why we're doing this. We got to get back to doing experiments. You guys have to, you guys have to.
Above the saturation point. So don't we need to check the PT chart for that to see the saturation point?
Oh, here.
With the bubble spray, you can only use straight bubble spray, right? You can't mix it with anything else.
No. Yeah, if you mix it with something else, then you're going to compromise it.
Correct.
And then when that gets into the system, then that ends up messing up the system.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is
to the Tories training app.
in our app here. So let's look at okay, so I open up my PT chart here. All the PT chart is telling me is according to that pressure. So this is R22, I have a pressure of 85.7, right? At 85.7, R22 will boil at 51 degrees. However, once you have vapor above 51, it is what? What's the word?
Once you have vapor.
It is superheated. All superheat means is that you are above the what?
Saturation.
The saturation point. So if I raise the pressure, to 198 and I change state, I boil at 101. Anything above 101 when it's in a vapor state is what? It is
Superheated.
superheated.
Okay, so once you get the graph and you look, anything above that number becomes superheated.
Try
So you
to
have to
10 degree.
Well, usually, yeah. So usually, you know, we want to stay within a certain range of superheat. You don't want, in your evaporator, you don't want 50 degrees of superheat because, guys, you have to understand something. Let's see here. Come on.
Hey Taurus, we just got a new they hired a handyman / assistant resident manager. His name's Angel. I forgot his last name, but he took your class as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, I was asking him about, you know how the math formulas, like if you want to find out the kilowatts to convert it to set it to the VFDs.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't even I have trouble with it because I didn't spend too much time on it, but him as well. So I think that might be a good thing to do on the lives too, like these math formulas.
Yep. Okay. So we have our evaporator coil here, right? So if you imagine that our liquid refrigerant is entering down here and it's boiling as we go through the coil, it's boiling. And then at a certain point, we have 100% vapor. So let's say this last 10%, the last 10% of the coil is being used for superheat. Okay. All superheat means is sensible heat. It means that I stop boiling. We have tape. You mean a piece of tape right here? Your tape right there. Right there. Okay, so take a piece of tape and bring it across this section right here. Yeah. You go all the way across. As a matter of fact, yeah, go all the way across. So do it in the middle and then do it closer to the top. I think I saw a container with some pens somewhere. Oh, over there. Look by the sanitizer, please.
The marker and
Markers. This stuff is fundamental to understanding. Oh, thank you. Okay, so let's say if we're just using the last row of the coil for superheat, then this is the refrigerant is going that way, right? Okay, so we start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees of superheat. So that means as we enter that top portion of the coil, that's where we are absorbing sensible heat, which is superheat because it's above the saturation point, right? But this is why it's so very, very important to understand this stuff. Because if I'm boiling my refrigerant, at 40 degrees and I am getting 10 degrees of superheat, my suction line temperature should be what? If I'm boiling my refrigerant at 40, and I'm adding 10 degrees of superheat, by the time it leaves, it should be 50, right? So that means that I'm absorbing a lot of latent heat in my coil. But let's say if instead we starve the evaporator. So if we starve the evaporator, hang on a second.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If it's 40 degrees boiling, shouldn't it be 30 degrees?
No, because superheat is above the saturation point. It is above the saturation point. Okay, now, let's say if I starve the evaporator and there is less liquid going into the evaporator, right? So that means now I'm also absorbing, so if I have a coil, right? I'm going this way, that way, this way, right? So now I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now if I starve the evaporator, then my superheat is going to what?
It's going to increase.
It's going to increase because now more of the coil is being used to absorb
Superheat.
which is what type of heat? Sensible heat, which is heat you can measure with a thermometer. So now if I'm boiling, so, you know, because if I'm starving the coil, I'm not going to be boiling at 40 anymore. Now I'm boiling at 30. But my leaving temperature is what?
60.
No, so at 10 and 10, so now my leaving temperature is 50. So the suction line temperature is the same, but what increased?
Superheat.
The superheat.
20 degrees superheat.
Now I have 20 degrees of superheat.
Instead of 10.
So that's why it's important that we understand if I want 10 degrees of superheat, if I'm boiling at 40, I want 10 degrees of superheat, my suction line temperature is 50. Because now if I'm boiling less in my evaporator, that means there is less what going over the compressor motor? Less refrigerant what? Vapor. And now I'm not doing what with my compressor anymore?
You're not keeping it cool.
I'm not cooling my motor anymore.
Correct.
That's why all of this stuff is important. That's why we have to know what are the pressures? What are the pressures inside of my machine? What are my temperatures? What is my amperage? All of this stuff is tied together. And I'm not just talking about air conditioners. You guys, yeah, we're going to see bigger and bigger machines. You have to understand all these things. You have to know what the words mean. So if I say to you, what is my superheat? And you, oh, I got 50 degrees of superheat. Guess what? We're going to be killing very soon. The compressor is going to die very soon because you're not properly cooling off the compressor motor. Okay? So all of this stuff is tied together.
The right voltage, the right temperature, and the right pressure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we did our,
So
yeah,
let's say we take a temperature gun and go to the coil,
yes, sir.
and we're gonna measure, because it's sensible heat.
Yeah.
We should be able to measure the superheat. Let's say in the last portion of it.
So in order to do that, I need to get my pressure, my low side pressure, and I need to convert that to saturation. And then I need to get my suction line temperature. So let's see, I should be able to.
Yeah, because it's not going to be the same as using the gun because it's inside of the tube, right? The coil.
So
Welcome to the Tories Training app.
if I go here on my recip, go to my chiller here, info, take a reading. So this is saying that my suction pressure for circuit 1 is 61.5. Okay, that is the pressure in the evaporator. Then if I go to my PT chart, so 61.5 is equal to 35. So I'm boiling at 35, right? Now if I go to, so this is the circuit 1 side right here. So I want to get the reading at my sensing bulb. So you see the machine right there where we put on the TEV. So that's the same basic thing that we did right here, is we have a TEV with a sensing bulb that should be on our suction line. So if you kind of look here, you can see. So Geraldo, check this out. So we just added this. Check this out. No. Oh. So now we can draw on the screen. So if you look here, this is my TEV that feeds into my coil. It's the same thing we have here. And now our coil is going around like that. And now it's coming out of our suction line. We just checked our pressure, right? So it said our pressure, what did it say, like 35, 41, something like that? Yeah. Whatever. It was 35. It was 35. So I'm boiling at 35. That's what I use the pressure. Oh, I love this. This is great. So the pressure tells me what the saturation point is. And then I'm going to go over here to my sensing bulb. Select my sensing bulb. Holy cow, that's interesting. Whoa, that is crazy. Something with the perspective changed a little bit, but okay. So I select my sensing bulb. I open up my tools. Definitely got to fix that. I get my temperature gun, and I'm going to take a reading, and it says 47. So I'll fix all this stuff later. So 47 degrees. So I have 12 degrees of superheat. But that's where, whoa, interesting.
So you want to keep in that 10 ratio, right? You don't want to go above 10.
Well, it's not so much that I don't want to go above 10, because there's circuits which might go to 15. But the important thing is for you to understand what is happening inside of the system. Okay? That's what all of this is about. Do I understand why I am doing X, Y, Z? Because if you're working with somebody, and this does not just apply, let me see something here. Let's see here. Come on. Okay. Okay, let's see. Oops. Can I open this up? Okay, yeah. I'm trying to pull up some videos from a field trip we just recently did. You know what? I'll do it on this computer. Yeah, yeah, I'll find the video in a second, but the important thing to understand here, because I know you wanted to, you know, we got some time, we'll do some electric, is you can actually look on here and see where it's what's up here. Okay, so oops. What is this? Landscape. Oh. Interesting. So you can see with our electrical diagram here, where it's talking about our compressor. This is should be our compressor right down there. Why is it not landscape? I don't know. There we go. Okay, so you can see we have our compressor, black, blue, red, those are the wires. Then we have the ground. This is saying our compressor motor, M. And then as we go over here, you can see that that's a switch right there. So that's one potential we have right there to break the circuit. Okay, then on our, let's see, what other safety, what our safety is going to be. There's definitely going to be a safety for the compressor. I'll show you guys on here. It's going to be under one of these caps right here. So when we take that off, we'll see the actual, but sometimes they'll show it right here on the switch. Yeah, they're not showing it here from what I see, but we'll add it on here later. Okay, so first things first, we have to get the machine running. So we'll evacuate it again, and then we'll so dump the nitrogen, evacuate it again. Then we're going to charge it up. We're going to run it. We're going to take all those readings, and then we're going to play around with the electric a little bit.
So for the second time, do we just
We're gonna do the
connect vacuum to the vacuum, or we need to dump the nitrogen out?
Oh, you always have to dump the nitrogen. If you put pressure through the vacuum pump, it can mess up the seals on the vacuum pump.
We have to evacuate the lines also.
So again,
You don't want to evacuate.
you don't
the
want to,
lines.
yes. So
Open pen.
yes, yeah. So you close your valves. So are the valves on the, you got to make sure those, that's always the most important part. Make sure those are front seated. So you see all that? That's pressure. That's just, so make sure your tank is closed, close your tank, and then back out the regulator the other way. Yes, because right now that's open. Yeah, so now you're closing it. Okay, so the nitrogen regulator is reverse acting. You see how it just loosened up there?
Yeah.
Because of all the pressure that's sitting in that line. That's what people don't understand. Like, you put a lot of pressure in there, it's going to be harder and harder to even take it off. So try and take it off, you'll feel it. So I want you to take that off. And then once the nitrogen, that's just the nitrogen inside of that hose. That's not the nitrogen in the machine. Okay, now put it back on and then take it off again, and you can see the difference when there is nitrogen in the line because it's pressing on everything. So you see how easy it goes on. Now take it off. Mhm. Take it off. Now, is it easier to take it off now? Because all that nitrogen was pressing up in there. That's why you have to practice this stuff. So understand something. If you have a big system with a lot of nitrogen and the valves in your gauge are not closed, that thing can start whipping around. Like I've seen people get hit, like it can get, you know.
We're not doing the third round.
No, because we got to charge this up. We can't. So you can't take if some of these machines, we wire them in a way to run bypassing the controls.
Yeah.
So if you did that with nitrogen, like it would destroy. We're looking right now. Think about this. There's something called compression ratio, which means that this compressor is probably a 3-to-1 compression ratio. So if we ran this compressor starting at 460 PSI, is going to triple that. And then, you know, you're going to have big problems. Okay, so we'll dump that. Yeah. Now, think about how small of a machine this is. We're setting up heat pumps we're going to heat pump jobs with 200, 300, 400 feet of refrigerant line. So you can imagine how much nitrogen has to go in there. That's why most people don't do stuff. It's.
Yeah. And how about the big machines, like the buildings?
Yeah.
You have 1,000
Yeah.
chiller.
Yeah.
Do they
They're supposed to.
fill it with nitrogen?
They're supposed to.
So how much nitrogen do they need for that?
It depends on, you know, whatever. So here's what you got to understand about nitrogen. The reason why that took so long to come out and it was such high pressure, it sounded so loud was because we put nitrogen up to 460 PSI. If we put 200, it would not be the same volume. So guys, you got to understand about, let me see here. You got to understand about the way that nitrogen works. If you look at that nitrogen cylinder, when they charge the nitrogen in there, it's not liquid. They're actually pushing it into the lining inside of the tank. So when gas compresses itself.
Tories Training App.
So let's see here. So gas compresses itself. If I have a cylinder, right, and I add gas to it, there's something called Dalton's law of partial pressures. So if I have one tank and it's 50 PSI, I have another tank and it's 100 PSI. If I connect these two, let's say I have some kind of recovery machine and I push them both into a third tank. So 1 and 2, and then goes into here, then those pressures are going to combine because gas squeezes itself, it compresses itself. So the higher the pressure is inside of that vessel, the more gas that you have in there. So if you have a large machine, the amount of nitrogen you're putting in depends on the pressure you're putting it up to. So if I have an R22 system and I'm trying to fill it up, we just looked at a plant in an R22 system. I'm charging up to 300 PSI. That's going to be less than if I have a 410A system, a large one, where I'm going to be charging up to 400, 500 PSI. And then that, again, it determines the time. Like some of these, if you look at the regulator on here, this particular regulator, I think goes up to 800, 1,000 PSI, because I've been on systems doing installs where I had a regulator that went up to 500 PSI. It wouldn't even push the gas in the system. At a certain point, it just stopped, because when you're putting the gas in, gas is also trying to come back. So you need to have a higher pressure coming out, going that way, and coming back the other way. So, all right, so let's start pulling that vacuum. Ooh. Oh yeah, this is a game changer. Oh, look at that.
This on a vacuum pump.
Yep. This is called, so that's called a gas ballast. That's called a gas ballast, and you're actually only, so, so something funny. Yeah, so this is supposed to be open during, when you start the vacuum pump, and because otherwise it's just sucking in air through here. But if you think about it, this shouldn't be smoking because there should be no air in there. So that smoke was coming from air getting sucked in from the gas ballast. This is the where you refill the oil. This is the oil sight glass. So we can probably drain that down a little bit. We'll go through that soon. Because really, you're supposed to change the oil every time you do this. Every time you use your vacuum pump, you're supposed to change the oil. Now, I'm not sure if you guys were paying attention before, but it was taking a while to get in that vacuum. Now it's actually going quicker.
No.
Well, that's the, so with the triple evacuation, I've seen jobs where, like, if you install heat pumps in schools, they want you to pull down to 500, then 300, then I think 200, something like that. So 500 isn't even good enough. The triple evacuation helps with that because you're flushing, then evacuating, flushing, then evacuating. You can see here, this is a 6 cubic foot per minute. And it says it can go down to 15 micron. Wow. Now, the biggest I think I've seen is like 12 CFM. So they have vacuum pumps they have industrial vacuum pumps.
All this oil. And you know when I got used to do it every time.
Most people don't know. Most people aren't going to do that.
How much you think they would get away with? Twice, 3 times.
Get away with what? Using it? They say like a week. Yeah. You should change because, okay, the oil, let's grab this. Well.
So my old job, we had a very old absorber, and it had
A vacuum pump. You gotta have a vacuum pump.
Yeah, and there was a leak on it, so we just kept it running for a really long time.
Yeah.
And we could see that
The moisture.
oil
Yeah.
was turning, mixing with water, so we were just dumping that.
Yeah.
You know, we could see it.
Yeah.
You could tell that the oil is bad.
So guys, what he said is an absorption system. An absorption system is a type of, it's a type of chiller. Mostly they make chillers. And they don't have compressors inside of them. They use the attraction of one fluid to another fluid. So let's see. In an absorption system, you have your evaporator. Oh no. You have your evaporator, and then the evaporator is going to be attached to something called an absorber. Inside of the absorber, you're going to have some type of fluid that attracts another fluid. Now, he said they had an ammonia system. So this lithium bromide? Okay. So lithium bromide is salt. So inside of the absorber, you have salt water. It's called solution. So you have your solution inside of the absorber. Now inside, because this machine is a chiller. So inside of the evaporator, you have an evaporator coil. So just like this, chilled water, the chilled water boils the refrigerant. So you have the gas. The gas leaves the evaporator and it gets sucked into the absorber. The thing that is sucking it is the salt water. So the salt water brine or solution attracts water vapor. So it sucks it in, right? So the next thing you have is from the absorber, you have something called a generator. And inside of the generator, you have a heat source. You have either hot water or steam or something like that, right? And that boils some of the water out of the solution. So between the absorber, salt water. So I have a pump where it pumps the solution from the absorber into the generator. And then in the generator, I have a heat source which boils some of the water out. So it boils a small percentage of the water out, and then that water goes into a condenser. And then inside of the condenser, I have a cooling coil, so just like that. And then the solution just flows on its own back to the evaporator. So that's an absorption system. The old style was ammonia absorption, where you had aqua ammonia, which is water mixed with ammonia. The new systems are called lithium bromide. Now, the difference with a ammonia absorption system and a lithium bromide system, ammonia operates above atmospheric pressure. So it's like 200, 300 PSI. In a lithium bromide system, you're using, so I mentioned something earlier, I'm not sure if you guys remember. I said if you boil water at 40 degrees and then you have steam at 41, is that superheated? So in this machine, water is the refrigerant, right? So we have a deep vacuum. Inside of the evaporator side, it's gonna be like 28 inches of mercury. It's gonna be a deep, deep vacuum. And I'm boiling the refrigerant at, let's call it 40 degrees, 35, 40, whatever. So I'm boiling the refrigerant at 40, it gets sucked out into the absorber, it mixes with the solution, I pump it into the generator, I heat that up, and then it goes into the condenser. So I need to condense it inside the condenser, right? So in my condenser, I'm gonna be condensing at like 100 degrees, but my pressure is still gonna be like 25 inches. So both sides of the machine, the high side and the low side, is a very, very deep vacuum. So guess what? We're always sucking in what in this machine? Air. All day long. As long as this machine is running, you're sucking in air. So you have to have a purger. So a purger is essentially a vacuum pump. Just constantly running, constantly sucking out air and moisture, and then, you know, trying to keep the cycle going. Now, it's your purger.
How big is that purger?
Probably like that.
Yeah.
It's a little air conditioner. A purger is just an air conditioner. Guys, we're gonna build all this stuff, trust me.
Press the check-in button for more time.
So with our the purger, right? The reason why we're purging here is not the same reason we're evacuating here. Here we're evacuating because the refrigerant is not going to play well with air and water. Here we need to remove air because we need, air. We need to remove the air because of the pressures. Because if we have, remember, we're seeing inches of mercury. So that's a deep vacuum. So if I'm sucking in air, I'm not maintaining that deep vacuum. Okay? This is why I explain to people, these principles are so very, very important, because I don't care about any of this equipment. I can walk into any plant and I can say, well, this is like this is like that. That's what you're trying to do. If you understand your principles, you can walk up to any piece of equipment and figure it out. That's what it's about.
That function was vacuum pump, it was a manual pump.
Yeah,
And we had a manual purger.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we used to close one valve, then the other valve, wait like 5 minutes,
Uh-huh,
and then purge it to a bottle.
uh-huh.
So that was the manual purger, but
Yeah.
when we had a problem, we also used to run the vacuum.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's the way it works.
yeah. And let me tell you, it's funny because the ammonia is very toxic, very toxic. So if you think about this, the ammonia you get at the store is 2% ammonia, 98% water, right? So pure ammonia, yes, pure ammonia, if you smell it, it'll kill you. But the problem with the lithium bromide, two problems with the lithium bromide. Number one, you got to maintain a deep, deep vacuum. So it's always sucking in air. So you always have a purger. So here's the question none of you guys asked me. Why would anybody use an absorption system instead of a regular chiller? Well, it doesn't require the license because there's no what?
Refrigerant.
No, water is the refrigerant. There's no. So Freon is just man-made refrigerant. Water is a refrigerant. Ammonia is a refrigerant. Anything that can be made to boil. Ice is a refrigerant. Carbon dioxide is a refrigerant. Anything is a refrigerant. But absorption systems don't have what?
Horsepower.
Compressors. They don't have compressors.
Horsepower.
So they don't have compressor motors. So there's this view that it's a greener technology because you're not using all the guys. I mean, I've seen ammonia absorption systems as big as this building. You have very, very big systems, right? So if instead of having a compressor with a 100 horsepower motor, if I have a plant that generates some type of heat that I can use in a generator, okay, fine. It's basically free cooling. The problem is I gotta have a vacuum pump for a lithium bromide and then the chemicals. So you have to add chemicals to the solution to keep it from freezing. And it can be very, very toxic. So I'm pretty sure you saw they had like vats of chemicals that they put into the solution. So there was.
We weren't doing that. They
at a company, yeah. They come and they put like all the suits and stuff. Oh, yeah. So if they were patching tubes, right? So there's something called crystallization. So remember, I said that lithium bromide is what? It's salt water, right? So when it gets very cold, the salt goes like that and it clogs up the tubes. And then they got to come in.
I was talking to one of the guys and he said, like you said, it needs to be a deep vacuum. If it's not, then
it's a wrap.
we dump the machine out.
Yep. We got to do a field trip to a building with absorption soon.
Isn't it more work shipping a system like that? Okay.
Well, it's work, but it's work for the people who are getting paid to be there, so they don't care. Essentially, so we'll talk more about absorption soon, but the reason they use absorption is because the only thing you need to have is heat in the generator. If you have some type of heat that you can run in your generator, then essentially you're getting cooling for free. So you'll find it in a lot of industrial plants where you have some type of, free heat source or something like that, But yeah, it's considered green. So that's, a lot of places they'll have one electric chiller and then one absorption machine. And they'll switch it up, but
I was thinking it's an older system. I never thought that it's like a greener.
well, green, again, just compared to, because in terms of, if I'm using a very, very big chiller, if you think of like some type of, okay, if you drive in New Jersey, on the turnpike, you ever drive at night and you see those stacks where they're just burning all the time? That's because whatever refining process they're doing, there's part of that gas that they can't sell. So they say, you know what, we're just gonna burn it. We're just gonna get rid of it. So instead of doing that with an absorption system, I can say, hey, let me put that fire inside of the generator, and that runs my absorption machine, and it's basically free cooling. So that's the thought process behind it. Some places they'll use Con Ed steam. Some places they'll use hot water. Some places they'll use waste fuel and have a direct burner. Yeah, an absorption system, the generator at least, is very much like a regular fire tube boiler. It's almost I'll show you guys some more stuff with it later, but it's very, very similar. So if I have a direct fire burner, I'm just shooting heat in there, boiling. Remember, I have the salt water, so I'm boiling a little bit of the water out, send it into the condenser, go back into the evaporator. It gets sucked out by the absorber, and then it continues the cycle. But it's, like I said, we'll build a miniature version here one day, but it's all just principles, guys. It's all just principles. So it's now you got to go soon. So let's assume we got the 500. So let's shut this down. So we're going to charge this up. Okay, so we're going to charge refrigerant into our machine. We're in a vacuum over here. What do we need to charge refrigerant? So you guys did it last Monday, or well, the last two classes, I think we did it. So charging is a critical phase. Everything that we just did was so that we could safely charge our machine. Do you have the first line? Well, no, you can put it on it. Well, it is vacuum. So we're connecting online. So this is 410A, you have to charge liquid.
Oh, it depends on the
Yes. So R22, so with the older systems, if you had like a R22 system, with R22, yeah, close. Yeah, otherwise you're just gonna put air in there. With a system like R22, what they would do is they would charge liquid, the majority is liquid, and then they would top it off with vapor. So they could be sure they don't overcharge the machine. With this one, you always have to charge liquid because it's a blend. So it's a mixture of two refrigerants. If you just try to charge vapor, you're only charging half. But if you want to have the full mixture, it has to be liquid. Now, this particular tank. Yeah.
How do you know that there's like a chart that says it? Liquid line, right? Liquid line.
So the question is, how do we know?
To know which refrigerant to charge.
Anyone's, well, if you I'll get one of the new tanks, but it'll tell you on the tank itself. But any refrigerant that is a blend, if it is a blend. So how do you know a refrigerant is a blend? If you look at the numbers, any refrigerant that starts with a, so we're not recovering, that's for recovery. So we're just going to charge any refrigerant that starts with a 4 or a 5 is a blend. So 4 or 5. So 410A, 407C, 404A, 502, all of those are blends, and they all need to be charged as liquids. We also, let's see. So if you look at the PT chart, some refrigerants will show you the two. Okay, so if I look up a 410A PT chart, you're show you. No. What? What just happened? Okay, this should. So this is a. So if you, I know it's fuzzy. Let's see. So this says 410A, and it says temperature, right? So you see there's a bunch of columns, but look at the top where it says liquid and vapor. So what that's indicating is that there are different pressures depending on if the refrigerant is in the liquid state or the vapor state. Now, on some charts, you look at it and it will say your dew point and your bubble point. Your dew point and your bubble point. So dew point indicates that's the temperature it condenses at. Bubble point is the temperature it boils at. So if you look here, let me go down here. So if you look on the, where it says 12, so it's saying 12 there, that's the temperature. So it's saying if you have liquid, now these numbers are in barometric pressure, it's not PSI, but actually this is PSI. This is PSI over here. So this is saying if I have liquid at 152.66, that the saturation for the liquid is going to be 12 degrees. But if I have vapor, the pressure would have to be 152.12 in order for the saturation to be 12 degrees. It's a lot, but basically that's because there's two gases mixed together. We don't have one refrigerant, we have two refrigerants mixed together, so they have slightly different pressure temperature curves.
And
So that basically, long story, that's why we have to charge liquid. Yeah.
And so they switch
I'm looking.
refrigerants, like they switch from R22, if I'm not mistaken, to 407, right? Or
So we're just at a building where they change a R22 chiller to 407C because the pressures are close. But when you do that, you got to change the oil. You got to really flush it because they're completely different types of refrigerants.
so why they pick 407 is because
Just because the pressures are
numbers
close.
are close.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And let's say we have a
Like if you put 410A in there, the pressure is way, way higher with 410A. So it would probably kill the compressor.
so let's say we're changing our R22 in a house, not too big of a unit.
Mhm.
So you said we need to flush it. So
If you are doing, so it's called a retrofit. So the retrofit, so not only, because the thing is, it's not so much the refrigerant, it's also the oil. So you can look here, you see you have oil, because when we're pulling out, oil was coming out. So it's really the oil, yes, it does. That's really all it's there for, but the problem with, let's see, R22 to 407 conversion. Now, Copeland is a company that makes compressors. As a matter of fact, a lot of like York and big chiller makers, they'll at least they used to use Copeland compressors. So if we're doing a changeover, okay, so number one is saying, so it's saying they do not advocate the changeover from HCFC, R12, HCFC, to HFC. So 407C is an HFC. So that means HCFC has chlorine, HFC has no chlorine. The reason why people do it, the plant that we were looking at, they had like 14 cans of 407C because they had a leaking problem. The machine took 225 pounds of refrigerant. So 407C, let's say it's 10 cans, that's $5,000. Right now with R22, that would be $15,000 because they don't make R22 anymore. So you have to buy like reused refrigerant.
Recycle.
Yeah, so
R22 was basic ingredient is like CFC.
So R12, which is one of the early refrigerants, was a CFC. So it was really bad for the atmosphere. So they changed over to R22, which is less bad, but it's still bad because it has chlorine, which destroys the ozone layer. So then they switched over to your HFCs, which do not have chlorine, but they still have what? What is the C in HFC for? It's carbon, which means it contributes to what?
It makes
It's carbon contributes to what?
it's like the ozone layer.
Not the ozone. So it heats. Heats what? What do we call it? You got other stuff. Go on, man. You got your EVA coming up. So carbon contributes to what?
Carbon dioxide
Contributes to what?
to pollution.
To what specifically?
To the
So the more carbon in the atmosphere, no, that's chlorine. The more carbon in the atmosphere, the more starts with the G. Go on. Starts with the G. GW.
Global warming.
Global warming. Global warming. So the more carbon. So now guess what? They're phasing out HFCs. So by 2035, you can't make or buy HFCs anymore. And they want people to start using HFOs, which are flammable refrigerants. So that's the next step. Yeah.
But using flammable will compromise you from.
We use ammonia. Ammonia is toxic. Guys, if you bought a new refrigerator anytime in the last decade, it's probably propane or butane.
Yeah.
Where do we start working on those units out there? Like, guys, what do you think is going on? The thing with this industry is you have to keep learning because they're going to keep changing the rules. So, all right. So, so you see here we're saying 407C polyol ester lubricants. So your older R22s probably use mineral oil. Do not mix. You can't mix. So it's saying you can use the same TEV, the expansion valve. Well, the R22 is 407C. Filter dryers must be changed. Okay, so where it says glide, glide is temperature glide. That's where you have a refrigerant blend and you don't have like one solid boiling point. There's like a range. So we'll talk about that. EPR, pressure regulator, evaporator pressure regulator. So 407C has a higher pressure than R22 at normal condensing temperatures. So remember we talked about our safeties. So you have to adjust your high pressure safety controls.
So then you need to retrofit a higher pressure valve.
Remember we said safeties. So this is talking about right here. So, okay, if I have a high pressure cutout on an R22 machine and I put 407C in, what's gonna happen? It's always gonna cut off. So that's where it's saying you have to put in a new control or adjust it. So if it's adjustable, you can change the setting.
Otherwise, it's going to be tripping.
Same thing with the low pressure control. So yeah, this is just like I'm trying to think. Do we even?
Electrical then? I mean, your electrical.
No, just your safeties.
Only those two.
Well, no, you got to change the oil. You got to change the filter dryer. You have to flush the machine. You got to flush it a lot. The big thing is the oil because they use different types of oil. If you try to use new refrigerant with the old oil, it's not going to work well. It's going to really damage it. So, okay. So yeah, let's charge this puppy up. So did we purge our lines? Oops. So we got to purge our lines. So you put the tank on the table, please. We have our scale. So guys, you have to get accustomed to using the scale. Whenever you put in refrigerant or take it out, you need to know how much. Like there's a big big problem going on where people are not measuring the amount of refrigerant they're charging and recovering. And guys, you can go to jail for some of this stuff with the EPA. People don't understand that, man. Like, this stuff is very, very important. Gloves, goggles, working with refrigerant, gloves and goggles. So building owners and service companies, they're supposed to be tracking, you know, every time they add refrigerant, remove refrigerant, they're supposed to be tracking that, and people aren't doing it. There's going to be issues. No, blue is vapor. Yep. Okay, so we want to set it up. We want to zero out our scale. Clear? Okay, we want to open up our liquid, just put a little bit in the line and then close it, open and close. Okay, now you saw the line jump. Okay, now we're going to purge right there. There you go. Okay, so why are we purging? If it's against the law to release the refrigerant, why did we just release refrigerant? To get rid of the air and what? Air and moisture, because we don't want to do what?
You don't want it to go back.
I don't want to put air and moisture into the machine. So that's considered what? What do they call that? Starts with a D.
De minimis.
De minimis. So that is the minimum.
You know, since the last class, I've never forgot that word. I think of it as a superhero's name.
I'm telling you, you got to know this stuff. This get very, very, very important. Okay. Now, our system is in a vacuum. This is closed. So here's the thing that always trips people out, right? If I'm looking there, so you see that sight glass? So my machine is in a vacuum. If I open this, you will actually see the vacuum boil the refrigerant. That was the little bit of refrigerant liquid that was in the line. I told them to open and close it. So you just saw the vacuum boil that refrigerant. That is saturation. That's everything right there. That's how these machines work. If I drop the pressure, I drop the temperature, it changes state at, right? So now what just happened? The refrigerant got sucked into the machine. You could actually hear it. So open up the liquid again. Just a little bit, close it. So all I'm doing, just putting a little liquid in the line. So open the blue valve again, and you'll see it. See that? That is liquid boiling. And you can see as the refrigerant gets sucked into the lower pressure, because we have a lower pressure in the machine. So the vacuum is speeding up the charge. But the problem is eventually the pressure in the tank will be the same as the pressure inside the machine. Okay, so let's get that pressure up to 60 degrees. Open it there. Now I can throttle from here. Okay, so close and let it settle. Now we're only charging into one side. Why are we only charging into one side? What side are we charging into?
Low side,
The low side. Why are we charging it to the low pressure side?
because it's the suction line.
Suction line, sure. Why aren't we charging the low side?
You want it to go through the whole system.
Well, sometimes we go through the low
The
system, but
compressor is gonna.
so guys, we have two sides of our machine. We have high side and low side, right?
Yeah.
Remember I said eventually the pressure is going to be the same in the machine as it is in the tank. As a matter of fact, let's get another gauge manifold with a very short hose.
Hey Torres, this refrigerant tank, it doesn't go upside down or it stays upright for liquid.
So guys, we have a question. Manifold, gauge manifold. So guys, we have a question. Why do we not have to turn this tank upside down? Why do we not have to turn this tank upside down?
It's already in
So this tank, how is this tank different from a virgin tank? A brand new tank. If I go to the store and I buy a new tank, that tank only has what, huh?
It only has the vapor.
It only has one what?
One output.
No, this one tank. It has two what?
Outlets.
Two what? Outlet what? Two valves.
Valves.
So one of these valves is for what?
One is for vapor.
One is for vapor, one is for liquid, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
Liquid,
a virgin tank only has a what?
Liquid.
No,
Yeah, vapor.
a vapor. So what do we have to do if we want to charge liquid with a virgin tank?
We have to change it. We have to change it into a liquid. Back to
Well, there's liquid in there, but how do you get liquid out? You have to flip it over,
correct.
okay?
So the pressure.
Well, no, the liquid is at the bottom.
Correct. And
So if I want the liquid to come out of that one valve, I got to do what?
you have to rotate it
I got to flip it over.
by flipping it over.
So why do we not have to flip this one over?
Because it's already in its liquid form.
Well, no, all tanks have liquid.
I mean, it's always.
So how do we get liquid out of this tank without flipping it over?
It has a stem going all the way down.
That red valve is connected to a what?
It's connected to the
It's connected to a what?
to an inner tank.
No. Okay. Inside of I think inside of the first cabinet, I think there's a canister that was cut open. You remember if that's in there? There's a refrigerant. We have a refrigerant tank somewhere that's cut open. Okay. Take that hose off there, please. G, we don't have another gauge manifold in here?
Torres, this one has a tube inside, right? On the red one that goes all